Hey everyone, thanks for joining. I'm the Greek. I'm the chapter lead for TOOOL in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and this is my first DEFCON presentation. So even though we're not doing this in the real, so to speak, I do know the tradition, so I'm going to carry it out. Opa. Shouldn't drink Glenlivet like that. Anyone who's familiar with the Fallout franchise of games will know where the title for this talk comes from. You know, are bobby pins more effective than lockpicks? The answer is, obviously no. But what if you don't have lockpicks? Well, you planned poorly. You should have them with you. There's only a few states that are that having them on you is a crime in and of itself. Now, internationally, I'm not familiar with the laws, but obviously check your state and local authorities to make sure that it's legal for you to have them on your person in the state that you're in. Like I say, there are some states that they're not legal to have on you at all times. Virginia, Mississippi, Nevada, which is strange because that's where DEFCON's at all the time. And there's one more. Mississippi, Ohio, Nevada, and Virginia. They're considered prima facie evidence of the intent to commit a crime. So if you're in those locations, don't have them on you. So if you don't have them on you in those locations, what do you do if you need to pick a lock? Legally, of course. You do what we've always done. You make your own, right? You might have started with the paper clip. You might have actually tried the actual bobby pin. I don't recommend that you destroy your wife's or your significant other's underwire bra until you get permission to do it. Just ask permission. There's other things that you can use as well, like spark plug gappers. These work very well, but there's a lot of material there that you have to cut away if you want to make this into a usable lockpick. One of the things that I really like to use is street cleaner bristles. Street cleaner bristles, if you walk down the street, you can find them after the street cleaner's gone by. Or you can luck out like I did. I was driving home one day and I was in my truck and I saw on the side of the road a broken street cleaner head, and so I stopped the pickup truck and I got some street cleaner bristles now. One of the things that professional quality lockpicks have over anything improvised is generally the handle. These are a HPC set here. These are out of the TOOOL Tremendous 12. They have a substantial handle to them and it's easy to hold on to, cuts down on fatigue while you're picking, and it just feels better in the hand than if you were to just have this and try to pick with that. So what I'm going to show today is how I improvise handles. You can do several different things. These are just swizzle sticks, some sort of a straw that I found to put over the outside of this homemade tension wrench. I did the same thing with this double-ended pick here, but these are all picks that I've made by hand using street cleaner bristles and a Dremel tool. And so that's what we're going to go over here today. The basic idea is just to give some heft to the tool, something to hold on to, something to give it some rigidity. There's multiple different things that you can get from hobby stores out there. This is a plastic that can be used. I tend to prefer brass, but there is also, let's see here, a couple of them that I've used an aluminum tubing on, and it all works basically exactly the same, whether or not you're using a square stock like this, which gives you a little bit more of a feel that's similar to this type of pick, or if you're using round stock. Again, I tend to prefer the round stock, just maybe for aesthetics. I have no idea why. There is a benefit to using square stock, and that is that you know, these flat picks and a square handle don't roll away. So the first thing to do is essentially figure out which one you want to duplicate. I like to mask things off and hold them in place. Get a good piece of stock. If it's rusty like this, I will take a piece of, again, this is improvised, right? This is actually wood sandpaper, but I'm going to use it. Okay, now that I have this relatively cleaned up, I'm going to take the pick that I want to duplicate. I'm going to do this one from the Tremendous 12. It's a... Man, I have the hardest time with that word.
Sinusoidal.
Yes, so sinusoidal. We're going to duplicate this one. What I like to do is match it up and then tape it in place with just some sort of tape to keep it in place while I trace onto it. So that's the basic gist of it right there. So now it's copied onto the stock, and next I'll get out the Dremel tool and I'll cut it out. So anyways, not identical. I can take more off of the one that I'm fabricating, but at this point in time, it's close enough. Like I say, I can take more off as needed, but I also want to make sure I retain the strength of the pick. Okay, now for the handle, I'm going to use brass. I want the overall length to be just about the same size as all of the standard picks. So kind of measure it, put a mark on it. So that'd be the overall length of the pick approximately. And then as far as the handle goes, how much of that needs to be handle. Somewhere in there. It's not an exact science. We'll cut the pick off with the Dremel, but we'll use a tube cutter for the handle stock. I ended up making two. This one here with the round stock, and then I decided to make one with the square stock for the handle. Go over what I do to secure the pick within the handle, and that's essentially just some epoxy putty. Forgot I was working on cardboard here. JB Weld sets up pretty quick. Put as much the in the handle as you can. Press it in there, and then press the pick in. This stuff I can hardly work with it anymore. It's almost completely set up, but you still can do a little bit more. It's not even sticky anymore. It's done. It is JB welded. Yeah, let's run that up. So one of the things about working with your own picks is you can make your own designs based off of some need that you might have with a specific lock. This pick is one that I use quite regularly. It seems to work fine. Here's the one that we just made. I'll probably clean this up over time and tighten up the cuts on it a bit. Let's see how I like the square handle. Might be interesting. Here's the one with the round handle. Basically the same pick, but just with the round handle. Made that one today as well. This is a pretty standard cross section right here. This one I made quite a while ago. I actually even took solid brass stock and put it into the base. I think that's probably a little bit too much because they do break. But like I say, you can make the specific pick that you want. This one has a rounder or a larger diameter barrel for the handle than the rest of them. Again, experimentation. This is just a very tiny hook pick for a very specific lock. Same with this here. This is a very tiny half diamond, again for a very specific lock. One thing that's important to note is that street cleaner bristles have a tendency to snap when you bend them into, say, like a tension wrench like this. And this is similar. I put a handle on a tension wrench, but you'll notice that the bend is not, super extreme like you might find on a mass-produced handle like this, where it's got a nice bend in there. And you can get to that. It is, I think it does make the metal a little bit more brittle, but you can make your tension wrenches out of the same material. You just have to be a little bit more careful when you bend. I think I showed these are ones with a half bend in the middle, and this one in particular is tapered to where it'll fit a smaller keyway. Again, the same thing that I talked about with regard to the specific picks that you can make that are specific to your lock. You can make a tension wrench that is specific to the lock that you're trying to pick. Let's see. So to the question, are bobby pins or improvised lock picks or homemade lock picks better than or as good as comparable to picks that you may buy? I think that it's very situational. The specific picks that I have made for specific locks were the only ones that I could get that would work for those locks. I had to make them, and then they worked. the quality, I think, is better with the professional made picks, obviously. The reproduction is better with the professional made picks. But I guess it's the trade off between the purchasing of something and being able to make it on your own. For years, I didn't have access to picks or any place to get them at, and so I made them on my own. And I think that that's where the fulfillment, I guess, comes in with doing this yourself. Thank you for your attention to this. I would ask you, if you're interested in this, to please post some questions in the channel so we can answer them, and we can talk about different materials, different ways of fabricating. We can poke fun at how bad I am with the Dremel tool. But also, if you're interested in this, look for a local tool chapter. Look for others that want to explore this lock sport with you and with us. And again, I appreciate your attention. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of DEFCON Safe Mode. And this is the Greek, and Yasu. I'm not going to drink it like I did the first time. This stuff's too good. Here we go.
Okay, and I believe this begins our question and answer section. So, I have a question for you. Did you ever finish cleaning that pickup?
I did. If you remember in the video, I made two. I made one with a round handle and one with a square handle. I eventually did clean up the one. It's the one on the top here. Made it so it's I took some of the material off, but I left the other one basically where I had left off in the video to show the difference between the two. They both actually work just fine. Again, the one that's got a little bit more material on it, you're going to be using that on something with a lot larger keyway. But yeah, I got around to cleaning them up. I think I kind of like the square handles as well. First one that I made with the square handle as opposed to the round, and I think it turned out pretty well.
Very nice.
Homegrown. There are some questions out there.
Several people are typing currently. So,
okay. All right, great.
We are currently in.
Hey, so I have something to add in there. Anybody who watched Preston's lock picking and lawyers and legal, that is, he's the one to probably follow with that, not me, right? So if you have questions about the discrepancy between the legal that he said and the legal that I said, which is basically I'm just spouting the party line. He hit it right off the bat. Don't take legal advice from somebody you meet at the con. There you go.
Very true. Very true. Only take legal advice from your lawyer at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And it would not be DEFCON without some scotch. Looks like we have a few people who watch the channel. That's good. I wonder what questions are going to come up here.
Yep. People are still typing away, formulating their well thought out questions. I'm sure they're very, very well thought out and carefully crafted. Only the questions of highest quality are
I hope so.
DEFCON.
I hope that there's questions about my wife's underwire bra, um, because I cannot stress this enough. Ask first. These things are expensive, but this material, I have not made anything out of the underwire from a bra yet, but I'm going to. This stuff is actually really good quality. I'm not sure. Uh, I think it's going to make a pretty good lockpick. Uh,
Would you say you
so.
could pick a chastity belt with it?
Me? No. Somebody who is intent to get in? Absolutely. Absolutely. In the meantime, I've kind of been experimenting with other things, that can be used as an improvised pick as well. One of the things I came across that I just happened to have in another set of tools was a um, it's a fabric needle. Going to be probably pretty hard to see, but this thing is it'll fit in most keyways, and it is very sturdy. Um, it doesn't have any lip to it. There's nothing on the end, so you're going to have to basically single pin pick with it, and it can't be anything with too drastic of a shear line, or difference in the shear line between the key pins. But this works pretty well as well. I went so far as to, if I can find it, I turned my office into a shop for this, but I went so far as to mount a bobby pin in some tube stock. And if you can make an improvised handle for a bobby pin, it makes it a whole lot more usable, and easier to, mostly on wafer locks.
Okay, so we've got a question from SRAN-S. For a beginner lockpick, do you find yourself having a more of a go-to pick? I purchased a kit with a dozen picks, but find myself using 2 to 5.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I got a set of picks from TOOOL. Lady Merlin hooked us up with some, and I got them in this case.
Would you happen to know what name that set would be? Would it be the Necessary 9, possibly?
The Necessary 9
Or the Tremendous 12?
So these are neither of the Tremendous 12 or the Necessary 9, but both of those kits I have. I do not have the Necessary 9 yet, but I do have several sets of the Tremendous 12, and they're great. What I've found out is that it comes down to how you what your technique is, right? If you like to single pin pick, or if you like to rake and single pin pick, or if you kind of like to try to do the Bogota route, with kind of a more of a brute force, figure 8 type of motion in there. It depends on the lock, depends on your technique. I pretty much will try to rake a lock first and see if it's sloppy, and it'll open up, and then if I can't do it that way, then I'll do a single pin pick. If I'm doing a single pin pick, I like to use a half diamond, or this is a similar profile to a half diamond that I like, but I can turn this over and I can use single pin pick on the other side, and it's a hook this way. So it's kind of a combination of both, and this way I can go in there, I can rake initially and see if it's a sloppy lock. I can single pin pick with the half diamond, and if there's something that's set up higher, I can do a hook pick and get up higher into them.
Mm-hmm. So Raider BW asks, could you recommend some ways to learn the skill? Is it mostly just start buying locks and practicing? I've seen some sets of test locks out there. Any you would specifically recommend?
The basic kit that we have is actually really good. It comes in a box like this. It's called the Program Basic Kit. The program basic kit starts off with a lock that has one pin in it. And with that one pin lock, you're getting an idea between how much tension you have to put on it, how high you have to raise the key pin in order to get the key pin and the top pin to the shear line, and then what it feels like when it clicks into place. I would highly recommend getting the program basic kit from
Progressive
TOOOL.
picking kit, you mean? At least that's what it's named on the site.
I don't know. On the box it says program basic kit.
Ah.
So program basic kit is what's on here. It's the basic kit. The other one I think has advanced in the name. What I like about those is it takes you from the very basics of the lock sport, right? 1 pin, 2 pins, 3 pins, right, all the way up to you start off with something that's very easy to open, right? And you get that immediate open, right? I got it, right? You crack the case, you solve the puzzle, and then you go on to the harder locks from there. And as you get better, you're going to want to try other locks as well. You can go down to Lowe's and buy some master padlocks or a cheap quick set doorknob or that type of thing. But for the initial start, and of course we're TOOOL and we want you to get our stuff, but that's why we've put together the basic kit, because it starts you off from go. You don't have any skills, or you just know the technique, all the way up to you can pick a fairly advanced lock. And then when you get to that point, then we have the advanced set, which is comparable or more than just competitive in price to buying 6 cores at your local lock shop or at a Lowe's, and then picking those. They're made specifically so you don't have to do a lot of expenditure to get a long runway for your skills to build up on.
With no audio. Okay, he appears to be back. So let us return. So we have a question from Mubi. What kinds of materials do you use for tension wrenches to get a good variety of thicknesses?
Well, yeah, so that's interesting, right? Because street cleaner bristles are all the same gauge, right? But I do have a suggestion for that. Go to your local pawn shop. At your local pawn shop, there's a guy or a gal who worked as a mechanic in a local car dealership or place for 3 months and didn't make enough money to keep it as a job, and so went and got something else, right? So they sold their tools to the pawn shop. And part of that is in the used tool bin, you'll find.
And we've lost him. This occasionally happens with Greek. He should have rejoined very shortly. So in the meantime, we will just have to wait a tiny bit, unfortunately. This is to avoid copyright. And he's back. Let's get back to it. So, the question was, what kinds of materials do you use for tension wrenches to get a good variety of thicknesses?
Yes. And so I'm not sure where I was at, but
Just on a
spark plug,
holding up a feeler
spark
gauge.
plug gappers.
Oh,
Spark plug gappers are great because they go from 0.26, I think, gauge is probably the largest in it, down to something that's really fine. I mean, like this is not much more than aluminum foil here. But there's other uses for these as feelers for different types of locks. And you can usually find these, you can find them for $10 on the internet, or you can go down to a local pawn shop and you can buy them for almost nothing in the used tool bin. So spark plug gappers would give you material that is thicker than just the standard thickness of like a street cleaner bristle. Now there are other things that you can do to fabricate much thicker ones, especially if you're good with the soldering iron. Right, you could take 2 pieces of stock. You'd have to use some sort of acid to clean off the material, the rust. You're not just going to want to use a wire brush to clean it up. You're going to want to use something that will help the metals bind together, and put those two together and then solder them, and that's going to give you a double thickness. Usually, you're going to want to do that after a bend, but I've done that once before and it worked okay.
Okay.
It's a good
So,
question too.
Chariel, I'm sorry, I probably butchered that, asks, have you ever made picks or especially tension tools out of music wire? And if so, any special thoughts on acquiring or using it for our purposes?
So not specifically music wire, but I think I've used a solid stock that is probably music wire. Um, but I would buy it from a hobby shop that would be able to get specific gauges. And I did make one tool. If you're familiar with the plug spinner, um, I give you a use case for a plug spinner. Sometimes locks are easier to pick to one side or the other. They're sloppier. The shear line, excuse me, not the shear line, but uh, the tolerances for going one way are much easier than going the other way, right? But say that the door jam's here, the lock's here, you pick it this way, and you just picked it towards the locked position, but you picked it. What you want is you want the plug to go the other way. So you get this thing called a plug spinner. It's got a spring in it. You put the tension on the spring, so when it's released, it'll go the direction you want it to do. You put it in the plug, and then you hit the trigger, and it spins it back so fast that it goes past where the pins would go up and set, stays the shear line, and you picked it to the opposite side and allows you to open the door up. I made a homemade plug spinner using what would I think amount to a music wire type of thing. But it was stock that I purchased from a hobby store that was only 15 inches worth of this stuff. I'm certain if you got music wire at the proper gauge, though, you could do the same. I mentioned a little bit earlier about how sometimes when you have a spark plug gapper, you can make a pick out of it, you can make a tension wrench out of it, but there's a lot of material to remove in that. And I can see that as being something that with a piano wire that you would have a lot of material to remove as well, unless you're making a pick that's similar in design to like a Sputnik pick. If you're familiar with that or not, it's a key blank where these wires come out, and they come out at very specific points to where you use each one to push the pins up to the shear line in a lock. They're quite expensive and really cool, but I could see where you could possibly make one homemade, but it would be a mastercraft type of thing. I'd really want to see it when you were done with it.
So if you build it, make sure you send him pictures.
Yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
Just Build
It'd be
It
cool.
asks, have you found a way to improvise tweezer tension wrenches that hold up longer than a couple of locks?
So, are you talking about the ones that spread out? I'm not sure if you can ask him a question back or if he can hit you back up. But if you mean like this type of tweezer tension wrench where it goes on both the top and the bottom of the cylinder, this one is made out of what we were kind of just talking about a second ago, is round stock that I purchased from a hobby store, and you can use it with any type of handle or any type of gimmick that's going to keep those together, right? And but the problem with that I found with this is I want it to be variable. So I don't want to make this solid in here with like JB Weld. JB Weld would make this a very usable tool, right? But I would have to make it at the correct width for the lock in specific that I was going for. So if you're talking about a tweezer type of tension wrench like this, then yes, I've made one and they do kind of work. And this is a good material to make it out of, because I'm sure, since you're asking about it, the tweezer ones, the material bends quite rapidly and it gets out of line and it doesn't hold very well. So this does work, but I do find the complication is that if I wanted to make it work better, I would have to JB weld it in here, and then that would make it very specific for the lock that I was using it on.
Okay, and Delusional asks, what is the typical lifespan for tools you make on your own?
Depends on how rough, right? Most of these lockpicks that I have over here, specifically that one that I showed earlier, it's over there. I've had it since I had my first, like, this is actually an HPC lockpick, right? And it's a carbon copy of the HPC snake profile, right? And I made it because I was like, this is the only professional lockpick that I own, right? And I don't really own it. It was just given to me. They say, here's a lockpick. And I was like, it was like King Arthur and the sword, right? Oh, and I was like, man, if this thing breaks, I don't have any lockpicks anymore. So I copied it, like, I don't know, several times. And I still have the one that I made the copy of, and I still have the HPC lock. Now, if you've been to the con and you've been at our tables in there, you know that we put out on the tables these lockpicks, right? And these are very thin, very flexible and flimsy material, and they're kind of, I'm not going to say they're built to be stolen, right? But we don't care when they bend. We don't care when they disappear. You know, they're just out there to work. That thin material does bend and will wear out. But the street cleaner bristles, I found, even if I bend it, I can generally get it back into place. But I haven't really even had too much of a problem with that. And there's also the, okay, so say the pick that you made broke. Darn, what do? You make another one, right? I mean, that's the fun, or the aspect of this, of making your own, that I really like, right? It's it's that kind of old adage, give a person a fish, they eat for a day. Teach a person to make lock picks, and they pick locks for the rest of their lives.
Okay, I think that is the end of questions. We got quite a few of them today. Do you have any closing remarks you would like to make?
Look in your local areas for tool chapters, right? If you're interested in this, there's probably something close. If there's not something close, become it, right? Reach out to tool.us, TOOL.us, and say, hey, I'm interested in making a local chapter in my area because there's not one. And I'm interested in lock sport. I'm interested in picking locks. It's, a puzzle that I want to solve. So yeah, in closing, I would say, if you like it, reach out to us, one of us type of thing. And that's really all that I have. Thank you very much for watching, for participating, for enjoying DEFCON safe mode. This is weird for all of us, but I think we're making the best of it. And just seeing that people are watching and listening and having a good time really means a whole lot to myself. It means a whole lot to TOOOL. And again, thank you very much for your attention today.
Thank you for presenting.